Please. Thank you. We always like to highlight these norms for working together at the top of every meeting, but most important is we love to see everybody's faces. So we ask you to keep your camera on if you can. And for those who have gotten to know me, you know, I'm a big advocate for taking breaks, but like I said, we do have a big jam-packed agenda that I'm very excited about. So I want you to feel comfortable doing what you need to do to stay in the game, get up, stretch, grab water, whatever you need to take care of yourself during the session, please do so in case we don't have time for a formal break. And please remember that your honest feedback and your active participation will make the network better. Next slide, please. And many of us are familiar with who we're in the room with, but we do have some new faces. So I'd like to quickly go around the room and say our name, organization, and for something fun, what you think is the most overrated pizza topping. Sound good? Little energy in the morning. Awesome. So I'll go first. I'm Megan Marshall, Manager of Work Solutions at Jobs First NYC. Super happy to be here with all of you. And pineapple is definitely the most overrated in my book. And I stand by that for sure. And I'll pass it to Carrie.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Fallhaber, Vice President at Jobs First NYC. It's great to see all of you and some new faces. I look forward to getting to know you. Pizza topping. I hate to concur. I think pineapples might be the only one that I really just despise. I can't think of something else I like wouldn't eat the pizza because it was on it. So I have to go with pineapple. Just doesn't belong. And I will pass it to Nicole.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Sanchez. I'm the Assistant Director of Career and Education Programs at Cypress Hills LDC. I'll go with anchovies being overrated.
Agreed. Let's see. Jill, you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. I am Jill Player. I'm the Business Development Manager for Strive. And I don't understand how anyone could put salad on their pizza. It defeats the whole purpose. I just don't get it.
I'm with you there. Trisha.
My name is Trisha Jones. I'm one of the newer ones that's here. I'm actually designing and the associate professor for the HIT program. So we will be preparing these students. It's fully online, but we will be preparing them to sit for their RHIT with a HEMA. We will be KHEM accredited. And I'm not a big meat person, so I have to say anything like ham, things like that, just for me, don't belong on pizza. But that's just me. Hi, everybody.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Excited for you to be here with all of us. Let's see who's on deck. Sama?
Hi, everyone. I am the senior job developer here at Cypress Hills. For me, olives. I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense to me at all.
I'm agreeing with lots of people here. I don't like olives either. I'm with you. Ashley, I'm going to call on you next.
Hi, everyone. I am talent specialist at Grace Institute. My thing is broccoli. I usually like broccoli on something else, just not on pizza.
I'm with you. It's like what Jill was saying, salad, broccoli, it just ruins the joy of pizza, you know, have your vegetables somewhere else.
Yeah, I'll just have salad on the side.
Exactly. I'm with you. Thank you for being here with us today. Allison, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Allison, the Manager of Evaluation and Learning at Jobs First NYC. I agree with many of these things except for the pineapple. I do not agree with you guys on that, but I think the number one thing I will be disappointed to see is olives. So I agree with that one for sure. And I can pass it over to Larry.
Hey there, I'm Larry Rothschild, Director of Workforce Development at St. Nick's Alliance. In terms of pizza toppings, I would say anchovies are the one thing I can't tolerate. Pretty much everything else I like on a pizza.
Nice. We've heard anchovies a couple times, olives a couple times. Sorry, Allison, but we've heard pineapple twice. Daniel, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Daniel Augusto, I'm the Managing Director of Workforce, Phipps Neighborhoods. Originally, I was going to say anchovies and olives, but I can't. I'm a practical person. I've never eaten them before, so I really won't say no. Because of that, I would say overrated is tomatoes on a pizza, which I think is kind of like I put tomatoes as already tomato sauce, so I'm gonna go with the tomatoes.
Love it. I'm with you there too. We're all in agreement except for Allison. I'm picking on Allison today. And Terry, I think you are last up on the list.
Good morning. Nice to
morning.
see everybody today. So I'm going to say in terms of pizza, anything other than cheese on my pizza is a problem. I'm gonna do the plain Jane. Yes. Okay.
I love it. Just want to make sure. Did everybody go? Awesome. And I know some people had a conflict with the beginning of the meeting, so we'll have a couple others join us in a little bit. So thank you for participating in that and in indulging me in talking about pizza at 10 o'clock in the morning. I appreciate it. I just want to say it's really nice to be here with all of you, and I appreciate the energy you're bringing. We have a lot on our agenda, so let's dive in. Today's agenda includes setting the pace for the network's implementation and gaining the group's input and agreement, a review of our collaborative efforts to highlight what we've heard from all of you and to ensure what we're reflecting back resonates. And then we're going to do an overview of Jobs First NYC's impact framework and measurements from Allison Bay, our manager of evaluation and learning, who you just met. Which will lead into a brainstorming activity using this framework to start setting some potential metrics, activities, outputs, and ideas for our work. And I see Errol just joined, so I'm gonna invite him in. Let's make sure he's good. Awesome. Hi, Errol, thanks for joining us. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to introduce yourself before we move on, I would appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I joined early, but my connection's having a mood swing, so I'm bearing with it. Errol Olton, part of the Gutman team, joining Patricia today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And how does this agenda sound? Good. Does it sound good, everybody? We're all in agreement? Perfect. So now to kick us off for the day, I'm going to pass the mic back to Carrie, and she's going to give some updates about developing an implementation plan.
All right, managing two screens and two tabs. So give me a little grace as I do that. Let me change this slide. All right, thank you, Megan. Many of you have seen this process roadmap. We've circulated an MOU a couple of weeks ago, and thanks to most of you, we've received that back. The process is really a reflection of the how for Jobs First NYC and our work with you as a network. As most of you know, but I will repeat it since we do have some new folks. Jobs First develops and advances solutions to achieve better outcomes for young adults in New York City and attach them to the economic life of the city. And our solutions are really designed to identify, design and advance practices and policies that achieve these better outcomes for employers, workers, and job seekers. And this is a roadmap for how we do that with you and what we've been doing with you for the past, how many months since March? I think we're maybe eight or so, or 9 months in. We've been coming together with you, and you see here, and Megan will spend a little time going over that in more detail, what we've accomplished so far. So I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is focus on something that you saw in the MOU, actually, before I move on, is where we're kind of going to double time our pace to get a draft implementation plan that is a way for all of us to achieve the goals we've set forth. You know, we made a really amazing list of goals that together as a network, things we want to accomplish that are different than what you do independently in your own agencies and the power of the collective. And we have a couple of, this is exciting news, but we have a couple of funders that are really interested in what we're doing in the healthcare sector network specifically. There's a funder who wants to join our December session with all of you and hear what we've been talking about, what we're doing. And so we will ask for your collaboration in planning for that. And that session's December 15th, is that right, Megan? Yeah, okay. And then there's another funder that is very interested in our entire sector network approach. Some of you might know there's also a green economy sector network and a tech sector network that we've been working on. And they're the ones who want to see a draft plan by January. And it's, you know, if we meet that deadline, then we kind of get in their queue. You know how it works with funders. I'm sure most of you get in their queue of what their timing is to consider funding the proposal. And we're going to work with you closely over the next 2 months to draft an implementation plan and get that delivered by January 15th for that funder's input to be eligible for their funding. And many of you were a part of our Good Jobs Challenge submission. And so we have something to work with. We wrote a proposal for that submission. So we have a plan to build on. So we're not starting from scratch, and we'll recirculate that. So I just want to go over a little bit what that looks like, what, you know, an implementation plan includes. And for us, and I'll just go through some definitions. I think it makes it easier. You know, we're Jobs First is so used to saying these things. And this yesterday, Megan and I were like, you know what, we should just tell them what we mean by that, because let's all have the same common understanding. So an implementation plan is a plan for achieving our mission, and it will be created by you and us, and it includes a statement of need, our partnership's goals, a representation of the service delivery model, our intended outcomes, a structure for achieving that, a structure of governance amongst us, any staffing needs that we would put into a budget for a network to operationalize, and related project timeline and budget. A logic model and or theory of change. Some people use these interchangeably. They're not quite the same. We can decide if we need both. I think a logic model is key, which is really a roadmap for a partnership to achieve its vision. And a logic model is important for many reasons. Some of them include just providing us a plan and a language to convey what the network is, what impact we will have, and how we will do it. And we've been coming together as a healthcare sector network for several months, and we've agreed that we want to, do a number of things. And the logic model will give a sequence for how we will do that. It kind of says, if we provide X, the result will be Y, whereas the theory of change really zeroes in on the how. And a service delivery model is most often a visual. It's a blueprint. It's like a graphic model of what we look like as a partnership. You all use these in your programs of how you will deliver service. So you might use a different term. This is the term that we use for that. It's for how we will organize, deploy people, resources, how the mission is achieved. And then the principles of operation is those kind of governance documents that I talked about. It could include a partnership MOU or just the principles of operation. It's a document that outlines how we will operate together, how we will establish the membership, like what it means to be a member of this network, what are the responsibilities and roles of members, how we make decisions, and ultimately how we'll go about achieving goals as a partnership. And an MOU similarly is usually that signed agreement that says, like, we are all doing this in partnership, and it's more than just a handshake agreement. We're signing on and agreeing to do that. So I know that's a lot. Let me stop sharing my screen, and so I can see you all and answer any questions that you might have about that before we move on. Or any comments or any like, yay, I get it. Errol.
I have a question. So where would, and this is just for me conceptually, where would a marketing plan, like how we intend to market internally and also share that externally, where would that go into like the principles of operations, or?
That's a good question. We didn't include in this language specifically a communications plan, but because this partnership lifted up a marketing campaign as one of its goals to achieve, but So I would need to clarify with you, like, do you mean a campaign for inviting people in as applicants who want to get trained in healthcare?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so that is that's one of the key things you all talked about, like that the healthcare sector needs a marketing campaign. And I see that as a bigger conversation because it is a clear goal. And I think it's a challenge that everyone is facing that does training in healthcare, and employers in the healthcare sector are really facing this challenge. So I see that as something that we'll have to work into the implementation plan really holistically. And probably include employer partners in that conversation of like, what can we do together? Because it's a sector challenge, not just a workforce development challenge. But yeah, something to think through together. Thank you, Errol. Others? I lost my little screen that shows if you're raising hands, so I can't see that. No, it looks like we're good. I know it's a lot to digest. We'll share this all in follow-up for you to kind of mull over, and you could always ask us questions anytime, you know that. So with that said, then Megan, am I tossing back to you? I lost
Yes, you are.
All right, wonderful. Take it away.
Awesome. Would
And
you mind pulling the slides back up for me?
as soon as I find the share screen button has disappeared. So give me 1 second. Oh, the joys of Zoom. There you go. Okay.
Thank you. So next up, as Carrie kind of mentioned before, I'd like to, as briefly as I can, walk through what our collaboration has produced so far and reflect it back to all of you about what we feel we're hearing from you all as it relates to what our network's mission, vision, goals, and interests are and could be. So I want to start with kind of a high-level overview of what we've accomplished together in our monthly meetings that started in March to lift it up, especially for those who are newer, and to refresh the minds for all of us. So in previous meetings, we discussed potential barriers our clients faced, organizational barriers, and systemic barriers. We've also explored and discussed opportunities available, such as funding, policy, employer and union support, enhancing partnerships between network members, but also with employers and beyond. We brainstormed ideas around how to solve for barriers and leveraging the opportunities we've discussed. We learned about 110 and its value to employers, job seekers, and workforce developers. We engaged with Memorial Sloan Kettering to hear about jobs in demand. And last session, we heard from NIACH to learn about their perspectives on the healthcare industry and to learn about their work. We've also voted on priority interest and on some of the goals, interests, and activities we've come up with together by ranking what we can and want to accomplish together. This is the activity we did in Mural. And finally, we filled out a survey to gather information on what our organizations do and need. We didn't receive responses from everyone, which is okay, but I'm bringing it up in case you feel your organization's work isn't included in what I'm about to present next. If that's the case for you, please let me know in the chat and I'll send you the link to the survey again for you to fill it in, and I can readjust the analysis as needed and share it out again. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So as I review this synthesis of our collaboration, I want to go over who your organizations are and who you serve as a group, the assets we bring to the work as it relates to training, certifications, locations we serve in, populations we serve, and the work we do to improve and support the healthcare workforce, as well as the challenges we face and the resources we feel we need to enhance our organizational efforts as a network. And lastly, to restate some of the priority interests and goals we hope to achieve through this partnership. Next slide, please. So who are we and who do we serve, right? Based on the survey, the types of organizations in our network are workforce developers focusing solely on healthcare, those focusing on multiple industries, and most of which offer some sort of wraparound service or services. And we also have a community college and a research and advocacy organization in our midst. And on average, this isn't totally inclusive, but an average response was that we serve 18 to 24-year-old low-income individuals without healthcare work experience. And the locations we serve them in include Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, and the nation. Shout out to PHI as a national org. And correct me if I'm wrong, you can let me know in the chat that there might be a gap where we don't have a program in Queens, but that could have just not been captured in the survey. So let me know if we have somebody out there in Queens. So next, I'd like to move on to some assets. Thank you. Based on the asset survey, these are the trainings and certifications that exist within our mix of partners, as the survey told me. And as a group, we offer many. I'm not going to read them off the screen here, but the top reported are CNAs and patient care technicians. And based on these training and certifications offered by the network partners, the most commonly held job titles you reported that program graduates hold are listed here, but the top reported was certified nursing assistant, which corresponds to those certifications. Next slide, please. And the wraparound supports that are offered amongst the network partners, as the survey told me, were case management, education-based supports, financial counseling, housing support or referrals, food assistance, and transportation assistance. And on a systems level, PHI focuses on research and advocacy. Moving right along, next slide, please. So going to the challenges and resource needs that you've reported to us. Next slide, please. The most frequently reported organizational-based challenges expressed by all of you were with recruitment, advancement, lack of funding, program retention, and alumni engagement. And the most frequently reported challenges participants faced include, but are not limited to by any means, need for immediate earnings, childcare, low TAPE scores for math and reading, lack of skills or certifications, limited opportunities for advancement, and limited time available to take classes. Next slide, please. And the top three expressed resource needs you've mentioned to us are a need for more funding, more partner entities to provide services and hire graduates, and more resources for research and advocacy. And lastly, reflecting back some of the most frequently expressed priority and interest goals that you've all shared with us. In previous meetings, you all have identified that together as a healthcare network, we can complement each other's training, services, and curriculum to make cross-network referrals, partner for career pathways and create advancement strategies, share best practices to connect talent to better quality jobs and employers, design and launch a marketing campaign, shout out to Errol, in partnership to attract more applicants interested in the healthcare profession, to leverage knowledge and resources to improve entry-level jobs and develop a policy agenda to advocate for increased wages and improved health and safety in healthcare. And you've expressed some other activities and interests that align with these goals, but those are kind of the synthesis. So what does all of this tell us about how we move forward? We'll get into some of those specific activities in the next section of our work today, but from what you've told us thus far, the following is what we think some of the high-level goals of the network could be, and we want to reflect it back to you in a way that could guide our implementation plan drafting. So often when we help a partnership brainstorm its mission, we tend to ask something like, if our healthcare sector network were operating on our very best, what would we be achieving? And from our work thus far, we hear the healthcare network strengthens workforce development and partners with employers to meet labor demand and ensures equitable access and opportunity within the healthcare sector to create family-sustaining career pathways. And moving down the list, when we brainstorm a partnership's vision, we tend to ask, if we really got it right, what would it look like in 10 or 20 years? And we feel that you are telling us that would be a thriving healthcare industry with accessible training, fair pay, quality jobs, and economic opportunity for all. Moving right down the list here. When we think about target population, we ask, who's going to benefit from our work? Who are we ultimately trying to serve? And based on our current offerings, this can be broadened. We hear 18 to 24-year-old low-income New Yorkers without healthcare work experience. But again, this can be broadened as we continue to work and refine these items and get your voices into what I'm offering here. And the four key area of interest revolve around employer engagement, network referrals, policy and advocacy, and network data sharing and collaboration. So I went through it as briefly as I could, but we'll continue refining these items as we brainstorm, and we like to implement what we want to implement as a network and how. But these are just kind of like a jumping off point for us to get our brains moving. So I want to ask before we go to our next section, how does this all sound to you? Am I hearing your feedback correctly? Is there something I've totally just gotten wrong? Are there gaps we should discuss? What's the general sense of what I just shared? I can't see everybody. I see a thumbs up. Now I can see everybody's faces. I was like, where do you go? I could only see myself. And
It's accurate. It sounds accurate to me, Megan.
Awesome. Thank you. I saw Errol gave a thumbs up. Any questions or anything that's like blaringly missing? Do we have a Queens organization here that I missed from the survey?
Or do any of you tend to get clients from Queens, maybe?
We do get a few.
Okay.
Yeah, we do get a few. Mhm.
We get a few as well, but we're primarily North Brooklyn. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, because that's something we can consider too in our work, and maybe as part of our marketing campaign is if we don't offer direct services in Queens, like we can tailor and target some of the people to get more communities involved in the work we're doing. Awesome. Any other input, thoughts, comments?
I wonder, does Gutman, Errol, does Gutman look at population from where they're commuting in from? I wonder, how large your Queens student body is.
We definitely do. I don't have the specifics for that, but we do keep an eye on that because a lot of our programming, we're really intentional on making sure it's responsive to like students like across multiple boroughs and where we're serving them. So absolutely, but I'm not sure about that. Trisha, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to chime in to Earl just for a second. So from the standpoint of this, Carrie and Megan, from where we're going with Gutman too, our programs now that are online, we will be able to meet some of those needs of those students in those areas that may not be able to commute. So we are definitely looking at not just, New York, but expanding eventually across the US. But so this program that I am building is fully online. There is no in-person component. So that's the direction we are headed, and will be bringing on more programs with Gutman that way. So we are hoping to meet those students that don't have that transportation, may not be able to make it into the campus. So we are hoping to meet those students at their house and be able to provide that opportunity for them to have that healthcare experience provided to them through the internet and over an LMS system. So we're excited about that. This is going to be a great opportunity for those individuals that may not have that opportunity. And I know Earl's working on stuff as well in his background. So I think we'll be able to definitely be able to meet some needs that haven't been in existence up until this point.
That's exciting.
That is exciting.
And is that for this specific, what is that training? Is that the tech and healthcare tech?
Yeah, so it's the health information technologist. And so what we'll do is what we do have in another CUNY institution, we have the HIM, which is for them to get the RHIA. So we will have that agreement and plan with them in order to allow them to move over from our program over there. So there will be that, and that is a fully online program as well. So with this, they'll walk away, they'll be able to get that RHIT, which will allow them to work in the, health information technology standpoint of things. And then if they want to go on and get that A, they can.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear more. Terry, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, even in this group, the 18 and 24, is there any wiggle room, or we're at 18 and 24 because that's where we've always been and that's who we deem like young adults? I think sometimes what I see in workforce is that, there are some people that might be like under 30 but still have the the mindset of an 18 to 24 with the no experience and all that. So, and I know DYCD is not expanding its age wise, but I'm just asking, have people, just thought about that. And Carrie, I know we always went 18 to 24.
Yeah, no, this is a question that's come up a lot. I raise it a lot because I look at data and Jobs First reports on the 18 to 24-year-old data most frequently publicly. But in the last 2 rounds of us looking at that data, we also looked at, particularly pre-COVID, because those numbers had declined so much. We looked at the age group right above. And the out of school, out of work for, what was it, I guess, 25 to 34, maybe, I can't remember the exact range, something like that, was pretty disastrous. The numbers were really bad. So it wasn't that things had improved as much as we thought they had. It was that people aged out of the age group that most of us work with. So my push is that young adults are older than 24, especially with how long we live, brain maturation. But that's a conversation for this group, who you serve.
Yeah, and the 18 to 24 that I presented was like based on a survey. So like if it doesn't match what we hope to do, we should talk about that. So I appreciate you lifting that up.
I mean, I would just add, I mean, that's who we focus on mainly because of our funders, 18 to 24-year-old Youth Build and Train and Earn for us. But I mean, I think we could definitely stretch that to 30, you know, if funding allowed.
Ashley?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, Grace Institute actually serve any women in New York City, low-income women in New York City from 18 and up. So we do serve wide range of age group.
Awesome. So yeah, maybe that's something for us to consider in some of our brainstorm about, like, how do we want to define who our target population is? And we could zhuzh up the language I propose, because it sounds like there could be some broadening going on. And we'll have a brainstorming session very soon, in a few minutes. Any other comments you guys want to lift up about what we're talking about or what I shared? I'm gonna take that as no. Are we good for me to keep chugging along? Awesome. I thank you for your response and input. I really like the momentum, so let's keep it going. I want to kick off our next section. I'd like to pass the mic to Allison Bay, Jobs First NYC's Manager of Evaluation and Learning. As I said, she's going to briefly walk us through Jobs First NYC's impact framework, some evaluation targets and ideas for metrics, and then we'll use what she shared with us to guide our brainstorming in some small groups, where we're going to start focusing on some of those measurable activities and continue some of the conversation we just started. So Allison, I pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Megan, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone, again. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll jump right in and go as quickly as I can. So Jobs First NYC's impact framework guides not only how we track our success as an intermediary, but also informs how a network like this one can think about, frame, and measure your own outcomes, goals, and efforts. So this is perfect timing for you guys to start thinking about this with some of those discussions you're just having. So as the healthcare sector network, this framework describes 4 areas of impact that your collective work can achieve. What's key about the impact framework is that at the end of the day, it is all about people. We're all here because we want people to have better jobs, more economic success, more fulfilling lives, and specifically in the healthcare sector. So as we briefly go through each of the 4 areas, you'll notice that success in any of these areas does equal success for people at the end of the day. And this can occur through direct services, which many of you offer, but of course it also can come through larger change measures, which is why many of you join a network like this, because we know that some of the ways that we want to impact people are at a much higher level and require collaboration to achieve success there. So we have a few guiding questions, which you see inside of these 4 boxes. And these are intended to help kind of inspire your outcome development. So as we go to the next slide, I'll dive into these 4 areas. People is the most direct level of impact. Some of the indicators that we try to measure across all of our work are questions around job placement, credentials, training completions, etc. And of course, you all know, and we were just having this conversation, that Jobs First, part of our mission is young adults. So many of our indicators are specifically around young adults. And you all may decide as a network to have a more broad scope than that. That's okay. But for us, that's something that we will always be looking at and measuring, as it's part of who we are. On the next slide, under partnerships, just like this network, this is a partnership. We measure how many agencies and entities participate in the network, how network members change and adapt because of their participation, and what's the visibility of the network, those types of questions. On the next slide, we look at institutional measures. So for our institution measures, we disaggregate young adults. And that is, again, part of our mission. And I think that actually was part of the people slide. But under institutions, we think about how employers, unions, other individual institutions might have changed their practices because of our activities as a network, or your activities as a network. And then on the last slide here, we talk about systems. And this is that biggest, kind of most difficult thing to track. But we want to know how systems are changed because of our partnerships and because of a network like this. So we often see this through funding, through engagement with government agencies, through new policy proposals, or actually adopted policies, increased awareness around an issue, things along those lines. And as I mentioned, systems change is so broad, so big, and it's really difficult to achieve independently. We're all trying to do that. Advocacy is a part of something that most of our organizations do, but we know that this often requires collaboration. So that's why organizations and individuals like yourselves join networks like this. So as I pass the mic back to Megan, and you all kind of think about what this means for you all as a network, the key takeaway here is how you all can specifically name and then measure what you hope to achieve together. Megan?
Thank you, Allison. I do want to pause just in case anyone has questions for Allison about what she shared regarding our impact framework. I can't see. And if no questions, I'll keep chugging along.
Can I chime in for a moment? Sorry, Megan. I won't take long. I know we have a fun activity planned next. I just wanted to highlight for some folks who are in the room and were possibly part of the Young Adult Sectoral Employment Project. And if you weren't, your agencies were, I know FIPS was a part of it, Cypress Hills was a part of it, and maybe some other folks in the room. And this impact framework really grew out of that work. That was an initiative Jobs First launched in 2013. There were 2 cohorts. A lot of your sector training programs were developed in that learning community and through investments that came in through that. And at the time, all of us, it's hard to think back to 2013. There were very few sector training programs in New York, and there were none specifically focused on young adults. Actually, there were none in the country back in 2013, which is surprising. And so we did a lot of work to develop intentional supports for young adults to be successful in that training. And through that process, we found, it's very common for funders to ask us for these people outcomes. All of you are very used to reporting that. How many people do you train? How many of them get jobs? What do they earn? How long do they stay in those jobs? Those are the most common report requests from funders for their funding, because it's a good way to measure impact, right? But we found in this sort of like sector strategies, and which requires partnership and collaboration. And a good sector strategy really involves changing systems, working differently with employers, being really responsive to the labor market. It's a whole new set of strategies that you're engaging in, and it takes time, it takes money, it takes partnership. And so this type of impact framework was developed to push back to funders and say, you know, the budget is this high for this program because we're doing all of these things. We're impacting all of these areas. We're changing the way we work with employers or the way employers work with our people. We are collaborating and partnering to make sure there's holistic wraparound services that result in better outcomes and better people outcomes. And we're changing systems so that a set of employers work with us differently. We work with each other differently. City agencies fund this work differently. Policies change to make it all stay in place. And this impact framework was developed for you to be able to capture that and report on it and to tell funders like this costs this much money because of this. So I just wanted to give a little bit of history to, you know, show why it's so important and how it came into existence.
Thanks, Carrie. And thanks for the heart. I like that reaction. I see that. Are we good for me to keep moving on and introduce our brainstorm activity? Awesome. All right, so thanks again to Allison for sharing, and thanks, Carrie, for giving some history. Up next, based on what I previously reflected back to you and what we just talked about around our group interest, we want to have a brainstorm within the framework of the 4 quadrants Allison just walked us through. So thinking about our work together, I pre-categorized our network's discussed interests and goals into the category I think they best fit, which you can you go to the next slide? Which you can see on the screen here. I'm not going to read these in full because you're going to see them in the Jamboards later. But I pre-categorized them, and these are all pulled from what you've shared with us. And the category, like I said, the categories, of course, are open to discussion. I just want to give you a little kickstart to our group brainstorming engine. So to do that, we're going to break up everyone into 4 small groups, and I'm going to walk you through what we hope to accomplish in the brainstorm sesh. So we'll be working in Jamboards, and we want you to consider the impact category. So from your expert boots on the ground perspectives, are the goals I pre-placed listed in the correct category? If not, there will be an area marked notes for you to communicate this in the Jamboard and to say where you think it may fit better. Next, we want you to consider activities. So what are the activities we need to engage in order to accomplish the goal of interest? And then consider outputs and metrics. So from those activities, how will we know the activity is successful, and what could we potentially put in place to measure and track that progress? And the final point we'd like you to consider is working groups. To consider whether it could be beneficial for there to be a working group that meets outside of our full network meetings to kind of zero in on the specific categories of our work. For example, other partnerships have these working groups, and the reason it proves effective is because the working groups kind of act as these design labs that drive the activities forward between the monthly full group meetings. And some examples of working groups and other partnerships include focuses on employer engagement, training and wraparound services, policy and advocacy, and strategy. So those are kind of the 4 buckets that you're going to see in the Jamboard once I give you the links. And the goal of this activity is for all of you to kind of start putting some of those measurable activities in place within the 4 impact categories. After this, and in our next session, I'm going to do my best to synthesize all the responses we get from you and kind of present it back to you in a way that could create our solidified theory of change, logic model, implementation plan, and all that good stuff that Carrie walked us through before. So in the Jamboard, you're going to see this is going to be where you're going to do your main work. But on the first slide, there'll be a place for you to put your name of the group, and it'll have a reminder of those like 4 boxes. Whichever group you're working in, it'll have a reminder of the questions that Allison shared. On the second slide, it'll have the 4 different goals I've pre-assigned to the category your group is going to be working in. You don't need to do anything on the second page, but it's just there so you can see all the items in one place. And then on the following 4 pages is where you're going to focus your efforts most. So on slides 3 through 6 of the Jamboard I'm going to send to you guys, you will see a Jamboard slide that looks like the one currently on the screen. Allison and I kind of thought through some potential activities and measurements as an example, so you can visualize what kind of ideas we're hoping to generate. We decided to leave our idea intentionally vague, so we didn't, steal anybody's thunder. But just to kind of walk through what we were thinking, you'll see the proposed goal or interest at the top, listed above the table, which in this example is about discovering ways to get more people through training. So then in the first column, you'll see the activity we came up with was to offer incentives to trainees. Second column, the indicator of success is that the incentive will help participants complete training. The next column, our idea for measurement, is to track who receives what incentive and whether or not they complete the program. And then the last column, we made a note that this kind of through line falls into the correct category, that category being people. Then on the very last Jamboard slide, there's going to be a question related to working groups where you can share your thoughts on that. So that's a lot of stuff. But we want to remind you that there's no wrong answers. It's a brainstorm session. It's our time to think of, what's possible, what we could do to get there to achieve some of the goals you guys have told us you want to achieve. And if you don't get to everything, it's okay, but please try to at least get one through line written down for the 4 goals that are going to be in your group. And then we're going to bop around to each working group to make sure we can answer your questions, but also to give you your space to interact with one another. So I'm going to drop the links in the chat in a second, and then we're going to come back after the brainstorming session to give a quick share out. So I recommend having a dedicated scribe to write in the sticky note responses for your group as you work, and to decide ahead of time who's going to share out once we come back together. All right, next is to share the Jamboard links, but I want to make sure, are there any questions about all of the stuff that I just very quickly walked through? Does it make sense?
Has anyone never used Jamboard? Don't be shy.
Okay, would it be helpful for me to I'll show that on my screen here. If I can. 1 second.
Will it help you?
What?
Sorry.
No, I didn't hear what you said. It cut out.
The audio is weird. I was saying, would it help you if I open it and you could talk through it?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm using the people one. So there's a Jamboard for the people, partnership system. So there's 4 different Jamboards and you'll be in 4 different groups. So this is what I said on the first page. You can put a little sticky with your name. These are the guiding questions that Allison walked us through. For those of you who have not used a Jamboard before, to create a sticky note like this, there's this side column over here, and you'll see sticky note is this little icon under the arrow. You can click it. You can write whatever you're choosing to write. You can change the color if you want. You click save, get out of there, and then you can move it around to where you want to place it. So that's how to create a sticky. And then here for the people related goals and interests, these are the 4 that we pre-placed in this category that are going to be showing up. Oops, across here. So this is one, next one will be another one. And then these are the same thing where you can put stickies to share your ideas in the column here. Like I showed you before, you can also draw and you can add in regular text too, if you want to do it that way. Does that make sense? Perfect. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that. Go back here. Any other questions before I drop the links in chat and put you into groups? Awesome, thanks for the thumbs up. So I'm going to copy these. You're going to see group 1, group 2, each has their own link. And what I'm going to ask, when we send you to the breakout rooms, you know how there's like a little pop-up that says you're being sent to breakout room, blah, blah, blah. Please note what breakout room number it is sending you to, because that will correspond. So if you're going to breakout room, well, I can't talk, guys. If you're going to breakout group 1, you're going to be group 1, which is going to be people. So let me drop this in the chat. All right, so there's group 1 people, group 2 partnership, group 3 institutions, group 4 systems, and I'll bop around to the different rooms to make sure if there's any hiccups, I can give you guys the correct link if you miss it. Are we good? Are we ready, set, brainstorm? All right. Love it.
I think the breakout rooms are closing in 12 seconds, so people are coming back.
Yes, Carrie, you make us nervous. Every time I see 58 seconds, I think about Great Adventures. Here we go. It's about to do the drop. And I start anticipating the closing.
I know there's something they make that button like there's some automatic thing in me that sometimes hits it and I don't mean to because I think it's red or I don't know, the leave room button, and just you leave before you want to sometimes.
Yeah, I immediately stop talking. Oh.
Awesome. It looks like we have everybody back, I believe. No problem, Daniel. Thanks for letting us know. I want to hear whatever you were able to accomplish in your group. We want to hear about it. And so I think we'll just go like group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. And I was in group 1. So I will be sharing out what group 1 proposed, and then we'll all take a quick turn. Does that sound good? Awesome. So kind of the one that we spent the most time on, and the first one that we looked at, the proposed goal or interest was thinking about how to build strong wraparound supports to ensure participant success while in programs and also when they get placed in jobs. And we had a really interesting conversation about that, which I don't have enough time to go into, but our ideas for how we could potentially reach that proposed goal. Some of the ideas the group shared, my group being Amy, Ashley, and Stephanie, was in the budget of our implementation plan, along with like a network coordinator, to also have maybe like a partnership case manager to kind of help refer and guide people through like a menu of wraparound supports that we could refer students to, both within like our partnership member offerings and then other resources that exist outside. And then also to make sure that continuous wraparound services are offered to students during programs, but also while they're transitioning and starting employment. It sounds like some of the groups in our, some of the organizations in our group do that, but maybe not everybody does. And our potential indicator of success of doing that would be reduced barriers to success in both training and eventually the job that they're placed in. And to measure it, we were thinking about if we had this like partnership case manager or whatever we want to call them, they would track like, you know, who they come to, who receives referrals, who acts on those referrals, and what the program completion rates are of those students. So that's one thing that we talked about. The next goal we talked about was to discover ways to get more people through training. And so we talked about offering stipends to trainees while in programs, and to put that as something that we would put in our budget to like ask for funding for, hoping that more people will stay in training and complete it. And we can track like who would receive those stipends and what their completion rates are. And the last one we got to, we had some questions that we'd like to eventually propose to the group for later, not now, about creating a pilot program for gaps in training. We were wondering, like, does this mean gaps in support services, gaps in types of training, and gaps in curriculums, or does it mean like there's no trainings that are meeting or matching employer demand or labor market demand? So we had some questions that I think the group could at some point talk through about what that would look like. And then we also talked about maybe creating a pilot program that's like train the trainer. So you train the the healthcare workforce trainer. And we could do that as a network. So my group, if I missed anything, let me know, but that's what we covered, and I gotta stop talking because I'm going on too long. Did I cover it all? Awesome. Any questions for group one? Which was me. I can't see everybody anymore. 1 second. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to pass it off to group two, who was focusing on partnerships.
Hi. So we were group two. I'm just trying to pull up my stuff. Partnerships. So we mentioned a few things. So first we tackled build stronger employer partnership relationships to strengthen program to job pipeline, promote collaborative sector and employment engagement. Ways that we could do that. We spoke about hiring a full-time business developer, someone who would be sort of focused on the job market and what opportunities are available, both full-time and part-time. Plan, organize, and coordinate like a networking career pathway event. Create a job board with a running list of job opportunities. So those are some ways to reach the potential goal. We spoke, am I presenting it right? We're supposed to.
Yep.
Okay, just to make sure. Okay, so potential indicators of success, we would have a higher job retention rate. We would have more full-time employment opportunities. One thing we spoke about in my group is that we struggle with full-time employment opportunities. Instead, we have a lot of part-time opportunities that we tend to get for our alum. We could measure this by having a dashboard that captures job attainment on a quarterly and annually basis, utilizing the work number. For those of you who are not familiar with it, it's really having a participant social security number and going through the work number to check and see if they're working and what their wage might be. And those are usually for your students who you have, you know, for whatever reason, lost contact with. Identifying 2 businesses per month that we can partner with and that will offer both internship and employment opportunities to our participants, because we are an advance and earn program. And then we spoke about, oh, I lost it again. The first one. We spoke about developing pathways for upscaling, advancement, and collaboration with employment partners to offer alum. And for that one, we spoke about reaching a proposal goal by completing an employer rubric. One metric is that employer partners have a clear career ladder within their agency. Alum focus groups to learn career pathway interests. Indicators of success will be employer collaboration on advanced training to upskill youth and incumbent workers. Employer interested in collaborating with CBO training partners to create a training in order to upskill program alum. How we measure that data, increase wages and benefits. Another way is to create a pilot to upskill cohort within employer, track enrollment, credential attainment, and so on. And then lastly, we spoke about share outcomes, data, and best practices with partners network involved. And for there, we had created directory system map, create a directory that includes available workforce development training options, create a shared resource guide for the group, having a dashboard that shows data and needed information for each network or partnership, keeping open lines of communication, bring alum back in to complete the next program or skill that improved the successful student and the network employer. Indicator of success, providing graduation rates, retention, admission data to see data and what information shows from the partnership. We'll measure that by using data on the graduation rates and how many students become certified and ready to be placed and are currently placed. And then we left a little notes in the comments. We'll say we will have an advisory board for HIT program, which will include outside professional, which will include outside professionals, which will help look at the different aspects of the program to meet the needs of the profession.
Awesome. You guys got some work done. Was there another one? There's another one, right?
Is there another one? Did I miss something?
No, maybe not. My computer is frozen.
Oh, the
on.
last one was the proposed goals and interests.
Oh,
Did
okay.
you share that out?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so by working together, that's how we'll reach the proposed goal. Touring other partner facilities, database to share offerings, clear referral partnership pathways, indicators of success, database and reports, how we'll measure it, outcomes, increase enrollment, credential attainment. And then for the last one, we just said we would absolutely benefit from a working group solely committed to this category of work. It seems like all of us have an interest in that.
Awesome. That's exciting to hear for sure. Terry, I see you have your hand raised.
I do. Shayla, I love all the information and think that all of it can be useful. But as somebody who builds partnerships, I think what I would have liked to hear is the mission, like for partnering. What I heard with the partnership that you just gave is everything that a CBO is doing, but how do we engage that partner? Like, what was the mission, right? What was our vision? What was our, even core values of coming into the work that we come into? What the partner is taking away from this, right? And so, yes, it's all feel good information, right? But what's going to make a partner stay? Right, and be a part of the work, like coming in, doing workshops, for us at no additional cost for sure. And what's going to bring them on campus. And sometimes what I hear from a lot of partners is that we as CBOs, we have a tendency to talk at a partner as opposed to with them, and then we inundate them with a lot of information that yes, they hear it, but they don't hear it because they're on information overload. But I love the information and the journey track you on. They did a lot of work, Megan.
Yeah, we would have loved to go further to sort of talk about, we didn't get a chance to, in that short time, to really speak about what each of our CBOs do differently. So I think that we all would be approaching partnerships from a different aspect and have a different vision on what our expectations would be for collaborating with the partner. Like they might, from instance, from our program, you might be able to get, free labor, right? You'll get some interns who are able to come and support your programs. And in return, we would hope that those internships would turn into some long-term jobs. So I think had we been able to go a little bit further, we could explore what are the benefits from the partner sort of partnering with us.
Yeah. And you know what, even saying that with partnerships, right? And Megan, Carey, I'm hoping like in this work group that we have an opportunity to define like language, right? That would help employers like really understand like where the workforce is coming from, because like I don't say free labor, I just might say additional assistance or something like that, or however we want to define it. So I'm hoping we get that from this partnership as well. But
sure. I probably wouldn't say free labor when I'm reaching out to them. That would be something that we would say internally, but when reaching out to them, we would be more so looking to get the support, job shadowing, right? Some work ethics and skills for our young adults that they could take on in their early paths of their career.
You guys did a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, I echo Terry's sentiments, and it sounds like we could all benefit from an even deeper conversation around this. And then when we're trying to schedule some of these like work group meetings and additional sessions, we should definitely make sure to bring that into those conversations. Exciting stuff. And for the sake of time, I got to move to group 3, who was focusing on institutions.
So we did a lot of conversing and got maybe more carried away in the conversation than we did some of the note taking. So I will go on ahead and present on behalf of our group. So our first slide, which was institutions, how have individual institutions such as CBOs, community colleges, employers evolve their own thinking and practice. And that question is very difficult to answer without thinking about the impacts of COVID. So we talked a lot about how, Daniel mentioned that there was a lot of interest in getting back into college for a lot of his clientele, and direct careers into healthcare. So he partnered directly with Hostos and Montefiore to address those specific needs. We also talked about how engagement with employers and unions during COVID was a little scarce because of limitations due to hiring. There were a lot of freezes, a lot of layoffs that impacted some positions that would have normally been open. you had positions that were very entry level, and maybe you had some of those positions being filled by folks that are overqualified simply because everyone is desperate for work. And then, virtual and hybrid programming versus in-person programming. So moving forward in this environment, most program offerings will have some sort of virtual programming aspect, even though the expectation is now that everyone's, back in person, but there's still going to be that. And we talked about, presenting a business proposal for large hospitals to show cost effectiveness, working with community-based organizations, and identify key staff to present this to. I have some other things that I remember from the conversation, but I'll add them in after. For institution-related proposed goals and interests expressed by network members. So we talked about a deeper integration and buy-in from employers where dedicated funding can be allocated to CBOs offering training programs that funnel employees to them. So we talked about, like, one example I gave was, like, how when they put up new buildings in the city and a certain amount of those apartments need to be allocated to low income or mid income, whatever, doing the same for jobs, right? If there's a new business that goes up in the city or a new organization, or I don't know, that some of those jobs need to come through the CBOs that are preparing these people for the workforce. Proof of concept for employers to see the value proposition of partnering with and hiring from the network. Developing solutions in collaboration with employer partners. So to continue thinking about how the network can solve for worker desire for remote and flexible work. Funders change the way that they fund the collaboration incentives. So OJT, tax breaks. Sorry, I see that there were some things that were already there. And then the proposed goal interest slide. So we talked about proof of concept for employers to see the value proposition, potential indicators of success, less work for the HR department to interview candidates. So we know that HR departments all over the place are swamped, and resumes at one after the other after looking at so many can look the same. So figuring out how we can partner with them to sort of alleviate that, and so that they're getting, instead of having to interview 100 candidates, we're sending them just 30 that are perfect for the job, and then they only have to review those. And it obviously is a greater success of hires from CBO programs. For data, how we would measure that is tracking job type, wages, and advancement. I am going to turn it over to the rest of my group in case I forgot or didn't expand on an important thought.
No, you pretty much got it covered. I'll slide over because for the sake of time, and obviously we had a lot of stuff. So in terms of the proposed goal interest and obtaining greater support from 1199, in terms of reaching a proposed goal, and I know for speaking directly for myself, there's been challenges, but it's definitely continuing to work through this network and through this group, so that we can, more importantly, gain the appropriate connection to the 1199 representatives that will be working, whether it's through TCU or not. And a potential indicator for success would be, at the very least, to establish some sustained meetings and connections with the appropriate people in 1199, so that it could be a brainstorming not only of ideas and exchanging of ideas, but also labor market information as well, and any forecasting information that we'd be able to get specifically from 1199. And just moving forward in terms of seeking feedback, in terms of strategizing how to incentivize employers for offer recommendations. So potentially, employer focus groups. And again, we have mentioned it before, and I think it translates throughout the whole of what we're talking about, is that proof of concept. So it's really getting the employers to really recognize the buy-in and the value that would be for working with CBO, so that potentially could lead to some sort of sustained funding that they would be able to offer, to us, instead of, us giving money to them, because we're really the ones that are really supporting them in that entire model. And then, lastly, going to the last slide, is obviously I think it should be across the board. Yes, with the partnership benefit working group committed solely to this category. So I think it's absolutely yes. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with everybody in this group, and definitely the jobs first on this.
Awesome, thank you. Any other? I know we only have 10 minutes left, so we're pushed for time. Anybody have questions or anything real quick for that group before we move on to the next one? Amazing work, guys. That was so much you accomplished in a short period of time, everybody. All right, I'm not hearing anything. So we're going to go to our final group, group 4, if you want to share a little bit about what you guys came up with in working on systems.
before did systems related. We looked at advocating for increased wages and health and safety, improving entry-level jobs. So how to reach that goal, we looked at collaborating with employers about different healthcare entry-level positions and discussing what those positions truly entail to shed light on some of the extensive skills the role required. Also advocating to elected officials and funders. And potential indicators of success was retention of staff, wage increases and career advancement, and then measuring it, really looking at job and career retention within the healthcare field after training. Then we looked at seeking funding to offer training stipends. One of the things that we thought was important was advocating to elected officials and funders. And then a potential indicator of success as changes are implemented by employers, hearing what healthcare workers are stating they need, and then measuring that. Also job and career retention are things that we would look at as well. And then we had raise awareness on healthcare worker needs. So that was just reviewing industry data, discussing the different layers and barriers. And then in potential indicators, we looked at things like daily attendance, graduation rates, obtaining credentials, and industry certs. And again, measuring that by things like program attendance and program completion data. And then, and a lot of these already touched on improving entry-level jobs. But we would discuss the different barriers that we discussed the different layers and barriers that come with the job title. And again, potential indicators of success would be that improved graduation rates and improved earning of industry credentials, and then measuring it by program completion data and career and job retention.
Yeah, and I think like every other group, we kind of did get lost in the conversations as well. And we were kind of talking about like, kind of like, what does it look like to advocate for the different roles in itself? Because every role is different. And I think like even Terry had kind of brought up the conversation of like, what about those who have like more education within that role, like aside from the certifications they get? What does the wage gap look like for those who are fresh versus those who have more experience? And then if the work is the same, like, is it worth having a wage gap because of education or experience? So we kind of like started kind of branching out to different concerns that we had as well.
Awesome. Sorry, I was writing down some of the things that you were saying so I could remember. Yeah, it sounds like this is all of these conversations. Obviously, we can't complete in the next 7 minutes. So I'm really excited to kind of pick up where we left off. And I'm going to kind of compile and look through what everybody did accomplish. And so then we can use that as like a jumping off point to continue these conversations that are really, really beneficial. Any last comments before I pass it to Carrie for one last thing she has to share? And then I'll close this up for the day. All right, Carrie, it's to you.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, I'm going to be real quick. I don't want to repeat everything I said earlier. I just want to remind that December 15th is our next meeting and a funder is visiting and joining during that meeting. And so we're likely going to need an extra meeting in advance with, we'll figure out with you. Megan's going to share a doodle poll that we already looked at our calendars to find some available time. And if everyone can make the same time, Megan and I will figure out how we touch base with you either individually or as a group to plan for that. We want your collaboration and planning for that meeting. And then we'll also probably, I think it's in the same, is it in the same poll, Megan, for January also?
Yeah, there's dates for both.
Okay, yeah. So choose all of the dates you're available so that we can find best times to meet with you, either independently as a group. And if anyone wants to do an in-person meeting, we're certainly open to pulling the group together in person. If any of you want to host something at your site, we could plan that. We could always host things at Jobs First's office in Lower Manhattan. And so, indicate to us, we'll send a follow-up and let us know if in person is cool. And if you would want to host something at your site. And I'm going to pass to Megan, and I'll pull up the deck, Megan, for some final things.
That's okay. I can say it so it's faster. We only have 5 minutes left. I appreciate you. So first off, guys, thank you for all your participation. This is really exciting. It's a big step forward. I feel like we made today, and we have new members. So like Carrie said, we'll send a summary and some action items after the session. And look out for those emails regarding the additional meetings that the doodle poll will correlate with. And we're also going to be sending out a form that kind of builds off some of this what we accomplished today, so we can get some feedback from you guys in between meetings, so we can kind of streamline the process. Our current scheduled meeting is December 15th. And the last thing that I want to bring up, I wish we had more time to discuss this, but Allison is leading the charge of a partnership survey that's kind of an organizational effort across Jobs First NYC. And its purpose is to strengthen our internal standards around remaining accountable to partners like all of you. And Jobs First plans to share back what we learned from that survey back to all of our partners. So for some of you who've just joined us, don't feel pressured to fill it out as you're just still learning about our work together. But those who've been participating consistently, we would really appreciate you filling it out. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to us as an organization and how we move forward. So I'm going to share that in the chat, and I'll share that in follow-up. And here is that. And with that, I'm going to stick around for a few minutes in case anyone has any burning questions or wants to chit chat with me for a little bit. But other than that, I will free you back up for your day, and want to thank you again for your time and attention.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so
Carrie.
much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays,
Thanks
everybody.
to everybody.
You too.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Looking forward to the next one, guys.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Just in time, I'm gonna go move my car before street cleaning starts. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate you.
No problem. Loved
Thank
it.
you so much, Allison.
Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Oh, I thought Allison was doing that partnership thing. Did we just run out of time?
Yeah, because she was going to be there. I was going to like introduce it in my voice, and then she was going to answer questions, but I was like, it's just too much.
Yeah. It
And
was-
I talked to her, like when you sent that, and I also sent her a message like, hey, I know we talked about this, but like things changed.
Okay, great. That was fantastic. The group 3 that I was in, and which I realized like,
Oh, let me quit the recording.
oh yeah.